friends, Chandrasekhar here again, and this time this is the second in the series of lecture on Vimshottari Dasha, as you know, and this time, having understood the basics and the logic behind why we use Vimshottari Dasha, at least why I use Vimshottari Dasha, and also why the sage Parashara perhaps has told why he thinks that it is the most important amongst the Dasha, and having understood the parameters that should be used, we shall now look at other factors. Now, as we know, Dashas indicate in a way the period of maximum influence of a certain planet. When we say it is a Dasha of Jupiter, then at that time the natal Jupiter is able to deliver its effects with maximum efficiency or maximum intensity, if I can call it that. I think that would be a better word. Same for Saturn and same for Mars and everything. Will it be good or bad would depend on the functional nature of the concerned planet and also where he is placed in the natal chart. That part we have already covered in our earlier lectures. So I don't think I need to repeat it again. How a planet will manifest in the natal chart. Remember that in these three basic parameters that I at least use for arriving at certain conclusions, even sometimes for timing of events, the natal chart, the transits and the dashas have to operate in, we can say, in conjunction or simultaneously, you can say, at the same time for something to actually happen. Because as we know that even if, say, Mars is in the 4th house, which can indicate some problem with mother or fighting with mother or sports or whatever, as we have already seen what happens with Mars is placed in the 4th bhava in the earlier lectures. Will that happen always? Obviously not. It would happen at a certain period of time in the life. So a sports person who might be of a national level might not later on remain a sports person in later part of his life. So role of dashas, the transits, the natal, the potential provided by the natal chart will all operate simultaneously to give us certain period of time when such a thing can happen, and whether the effects will be felt throughout the life or otherwise is a different question which can be seen from yogas, about which I might be talking later on. But yogas I have always considered to be sort of empirical formula, so that if you forget the formula you don't even understand what is going to happen. So better to understand why the yogas themselves manifest, I will be speaking on them later on. After Vimshottari Dasha is over, perhaps I will be talking about yogas. So my dear friend, we first have to decide whether a planet is functionally benefic or otherwise. It is as simple as saying whether a criminal will be good for a criminal and a sage will be good for a pious person and vice versa. So you know the answer. So it is not that all planets during their period will be good for everybody. Just because they are benefic naturally or just because they are malefic naturally, they will harm. It's not necessary. That is one of the misconceptions which people carry in their mind. And I have seen many people thinking that Rahu Dasha is always bad. You will find many people, gaining like anything in Rahu Dasha or Saturn Dasha or Mars Dasha, and many people having very bad time during Jupiter Dasha. So remember that the nature of the planet has nothing to do with its functional nature. That would depend from Lagna to Lagna. It would differ. And that is what we are trying to delve deeper into to understand how to apply the Vimshottari Dasha principle. That again is why on Vimshottari Dasha there have been umpteen number of commentaries written by the great Acharyas, as we call it. Acharyas in the ancient way of interpreting the Sanskrit words would be somebody who is knowledgeable and who can teach or who wants to impart knowledge. Is an Acharya. Knowledge of things which are of use on the material part of the world. Of course, there are also Acharyas who are connected with the spiritual part of the world. But Hindus never distinguished between the two. They rather thought that both converge onto each other, and so even a knowledge which is to be used in this world, it can also be used for some spiritual work if your intention is to help people. And period. We have great confusion about all these things happening all the while in our lives, and as I said, I have started this series to let the posterity know the way I think about it or I interpret it. I may be wrong, I might be right. You can check it when you apply these principles on real life chart. That is the only correct test of whether some knowledge being imparted or what we understand by what is being said or written is right or wrong is the pratyaksha. The pratyaksha praman is the test for astrology. Remember that. I think I have already told about it earlier in the earlier lectures. So, very simple, basic principle. They say, Sarve Trikona Netaro, that means all planets who are Neta is the leader, means the owner. We have to understand it. Sarve Trikona Netaro means all the planets that own trines. Trikona is trine. I may be using the word Trikona or Kendra interchangeably with the word trine and square, and you will have to pardon me because I use 2 or 3 languages to teach or even communicate. Hindi, Marathi and English I am fairly, let us say, comfortable with. I understand a bit of Sanskrit also, though I am not a scholar of Sanskrit, but I do understand whether what is being said has been interpreted correctly or not. To that extent only I know Sanskrit, but I am not a master of Sanskrit. I can't speak it fluently. I must be very clear about it. So this is Sarva Trikona Netaro Grahaha Shubha Phalapradaha. Always they give good results. Then, but there is exception. So now remember that in astrology the exceptions are exceptionally and very, very important. Unless we understand the exceptions, we will never understand. Most of the shlokas that I am telling come either from Ududaya Pradeep, one of the commentaries which later came to be known as Laghu Parashari, because it is also the shlokas from Parashari which have been taken by the learned and commented upon. There is also something called as Sushloka Shatak, which also is about interpretation of dashas of Vimshottari Dasha, dashas which are based on the nakshatra position of moon. So remember that. Now, there is always an exception. What is the exception? If all trines are benefic, then what happens? See, the sages understood that barring moon and sun, all planets own 2 houses or 2 rashis, isn't it? So for sun and moon, of course, if they are trine lord, they are always supposed to be functionally benefic. But if it is something else, then what happens? Patayastri Sharayanam. That means the lord of the 3, 6 and 11. Yadi Papa Phalapradaha. If they are also lord of 3, 6 and 11, then they can give negative results. This has to be understood. So we don't, jump to conclusion just because it is a trine lord, something great is going to happen. Yeah, it will still happen. About that we will speak. The exception to exceptions we will speak. As you know, I speak extempore and then sometimes I speak about it. Then what happens? Another exception is we think that Shubha Grahas, the benefics, shall also be, always be benefic if they own Kendra. Because the confusion between people's mind is, this is called as a Kendradhipati dosha. This is another exception to the normal rules, but even then it is not exactly an exception. Remember that. So they say, Nadishanti Shubham Nuna. The benefics do not give good results to Nrunan means human beings. So Saumya Kendra Dhipayadi. If the benefics, that is the natural benefics own Kendras, they would not give auspicious results. Kruraschet Shubham Yat. Kruraschet Shubham Yete. Prabala Uttara. But if they are malefics, then they will give better and better good results. Now, what is this better and better? That means, if a malefic is Lord of the Kendra, his good results will be least. Then better results will be given by the Lord of the 4th house, if he happens to be a malefic. Then next in order comes the 7th house. And then Lord of the 10th, if he is a malefic, can give good results. Now here we have to understand, when they say XYZ doesn't give good results, you always should take it into right perspective. It doesn't give good results does not necessarily mean it will give bad results. Or when even the malefics, the Krur Graha, owning the squares, the Kendras, will not give bad results is correct. But will they always give good results? Yeah, sometimes they will give good results, sometimes they might not. Now those exceptions we will understand if we also take our, rather, if we sort of, try to activate our memory about what we have already read. I am sure most of you must have read the great Parashara and Jatak Parijata and Mantreshwara's Phaladipika and so on and so forth, maybe even my book. So, what we have to understand is, there is always an exception to rule, and there is an exception to exception in astrology. And the problem is, when we don't get good results here, or more or less near accurate results, is when we forget those exceptions and also the exceptions to the exceptions. So here, the exception to exception is, one thing, that even if a planet is benefic, being Lord of a Kendra, he does not necessarily become, he does not become competent to give auspicious results in his own dasha. Especially if he is a naturally benefic planet. And if he is a malefic and owns Kendra, he would give better and better results. The least being when he is Lord of the Lagna and going to the 4th house and so on till the 10th house, when he gives the best of the results. Okay, now what is the exception? The exception is when they occupy their own Kendra, their own square. This goes again reverse. So, say Jupiter in Kendra, in own house, would not deliver negative results. When? During his dasha. Otherwise, Jupiter having the place where that he occupies would still do that to some extent in a beneficial way, as we have already seen in our lecture on Jupiter. So please don't forget that. And what happens to the malefics? Again the same thing. If malefic occupies the Kendra that he owns, then he does not give auspicious results. So these complications you will have to remember when you apply dashas. Otherwise what happens is, we always see people saying that this is a malefic owning a Kendra, he will always give good results. Not necessarily so. He will always give bad results. Again, not necessarily so. There are other flavors which I will try to elaborate upon and explain, as if you give me positive response, rather if you tell me that you are liking these lectures on Vimshottari Dasha, they become sometimes tiring for me too when I started learning. So then we will go into deeper and deeper into the different flavors of the Vimshottari Dasha and its interpretation. Now, you will think, people say these Trikasthana lords are also bad, that you will get later on. The lords of 6, 8 and 12. 6 of course is covered in the Trishadayapati shloka that we read or you heard just now. And so what is left? Nothing is left. No, there is something still there. What is left is the second and the 12th house, is it? We also to understand that 6, 8 and 12 are supposed to be negative places, isn't it? So what is the significance of 3, 6, 8? 3, 6, 11, sorry, 3 Shada Aya. 3 means 3, Shada means 6, and Aya means the Aya Sthana, the house of income, which is 11. Isn't it? So 3 Shada means lords of these things. So we will see that 6th house, is a Roga Sthana, and 6 from 6, here the Bhavas Bhava principle is applied. And we even don't understand, because we have a habit of remembering only the shlokas, not understanding the principles. I mean, that is what I used to do when I was very young. Of course, later on, due to prodding of my father, who never taught me in the informal manner, but he sometimes would say why this is happening, and if I give a wrong answer, then he said why XYZ thing would not happen, and then I had to think and apply my mind. So I got into this sort of a complex thought process or interpretation of what the sages have said, like it or not. So, then third house, the third bhava is 8th from the 8th bhava. So these are going to give not so good results, is very obvious. Doesn't take rocket science to understand that. You know that 6, 8 and 12 are bhavas whose lords generally do not give good results. Now again the exception to exception. What happens to the 12th bhava? And what happens to the second bhava? Isn't it? Because we know that second bhava is called the Markasthana, because it is 12 to the 8th from 8th, that is 12 to the 3rd, and 7th bhava is again called the Markasthana, being exactly 12 to the 8th house, because 8th house primarily is Ayushthana. Don't forget that. We call it Mrityusthana because when there is a damage to that house, then of course if damage is there to your life, there would be death or death-like pains. So please don't jump to conclusions just by listening to the nomenclatures which are sometimes used in one way and sometimes in another way. Understand what is happening there. Okay. So I hope I am not boring you, but yeah, I have a habit of explaining things in depth. So in case of the second lord and the 12th lord, what happens? Lagnat Vaya Ditiyesho. At is the Panchami, so from Lagna, Vaya and Dvitiyesh means the lord of the 12th and the lord of the second. What they do? Paresham Sahacharyata. Those lord give results of the lord whom they conjoined is one. Next, if there is, naturally the question will come, what happens if no planet is conjunct to these lords? Because that can happen. I mean, it's not necessary that every time the second lord has to conjoin with somebody or other. And so, Sthanantara, no good name, no? Sthanantar means another house. So this is Sthanantar. That means the second house that is owned by this lord of the second, 12th, their results will be delivered by the lord of the second or lord of the 12th in their own dashas. See? So, Sthanantara Anugurnena Bhavatah happens Faladayaka. Whatever is the result, you suppose the second lord is also the third lord, then obviously he will give the results of the third house, which is not good. Trishadayapati, is not. So in a way they are supposed to be neutral bhavas, who by association can give results of the bhava lord that they associate with. That is the functional nature of the bhava is absorbed by them, or their own another bhava. Now again the question comes, what happens if they are either moon or sun, because they don't own any other bhava and they happen to be alone? Apply your logic, they would not give good results, is certain. Now even here I mean, we are overrunning time. I see it is something 19 minutes, something on, and I like to keep the lectures within 20 minutes or 25 minutes. So, other things we will cover later on. So, what happens is, as regards the second bhava Lord, he would give good results of the second bhava. But in case of death or whatever, he will give bad results. That is why he is called the Maraka. 12th house, the Lord also does the same thing. 12th house, if you are going abroad, then 12th Lord does come into picture. Isn't it? So his Dasha will be there. Don't think that because 12th Lord Dasha is there, you are not going to go abroad. No, you might be going abroad precisely in Dasha of the 12th Lord. Because then he has the, I call it authority to deliver results connected with the 12th bhava. Maybe losses, maybe death, maybe going abroad, even getting the moksha, getting sleep, being drowsy, being in the hospital, all those things he will give. So remember this thing. Never think that since a Lord is a functional malefic, he will always give. No, his Dasha will be somewhere there which takes you to that bhava if transits are also telling you something is happening in that bhava. So remember this, and if you like this, let me know. I am awaiting, as a matter of fact, results or reactions of the earlier lectures that I have already uploaded. And if you people like this, we will take this further. And so my friends, it's 20-21 minutes, something like that. The counter on the screen is telling me. I shoot it on a simple mobile phone, so if you sometimes find that the color is not right or whatever, please excuse me. This is just a love of labor for me. So this has nothing to do with earning money or anything. And if you want to go deeper into it, do read Laghu Parashari or Ududaya Pradeep as it is called. You might not get the original manuscript or might not even understand it, because it is a bit complex. There are umpteen number of commentaries on it. So remember, when on a Sanskrit book there are many number of commentaries. It is a very interesting book. There is something there because it has to be interpreted by the learned in different manner. They have done it in different manner. Reading all of them is good. Sometimes the shlokas get corrupted and all that, so you have to apply your mind while commenting upon it. I have also written one commentary on that at the instance of Saptarshi Astrology people. So Saptarshi Publications has published it, but you need not read mine because anyway I will be talking about it, or you may read that. But any of them you should have in your library if you want to understand how to interpret Vimshottari Dasha. And since its name is Ududaya Dasha, you can apply the same principles to most of the Nakshatra Dasha. This one has to understand how to apply, would change according to the Dasha. Like for Kala Chakra Dasha, there will be some different parameters which will be involved. But for Vimshottari, it is wonderful. And remember that Vimshottari Mukhya Mata is what the great sage Parashara said. Also, please remember that Laghu Parashari is not a separate, what we call, Grantha, barring the first 2 or 3 shlokas. All those shlokas are already there in, Brahat Parashari. Ududaya means Nakshatra, Daya is Dasha, Udu is Nakshatra, Nakshatra Dasha, Pradeep. This is illuminating the part about Nakshatra Dasha, so it is called Ududaya Pradeep. And even the author makes it clear that he has tried to inform you or rather comment upon what he has learned from Parashara. So please, that is one confusion people have. Those who swear by Parashara think that Laghu Parashara is something different. No, it is not different. All those shlokas you will get in the Parashariya. The shlokas, some words may be different because in different edition of Parashariya, which is now known as the Brahat Parashar Hora Shastra, there would be some shlokas which will be different because it was all written from memory. So my friends, it's high time I take your leave, and do let me know your impressions, and I try to impart the knowledge of Vimshottari Dasha the best way that I can, which is extempore. So good night.